Hey, good morning, everybody, and thanks for joining me. I'm Dr. Noah Erickson from Innovative Family Wellness, and I want to invite everybody to our session today on autism. So it's April, right? Autism Awareness Month. And I have been in this field now for 13 years, treating children, and these special kiddos I've seen with diagnoses coming in of ADD, ADHD, autism spectrum disorder, and many other on the spectrum. So many parents ask, is this biologic? In other words, could there be something in my child's environment, their diet, nutrition, lifestyle that's affecting behavior? So I'm going to be mentioning many steps here today of how to identify that a problem could be related to food, nutrition, the environment in your child. But I'm going to be talking about three main steps today, and I thought I'd jump in here and at first let you know my personal opinion. My personal opinion is that when we look at this condition of autism spectrum disorder, we have to appreciate that many kiddos, unfortunately, have got to, number one, remove toxins. So my personal view on autism is multifactorial. I think it's part environmental. I think there's genetic predisposition. I think there's underlying gut and immune challenges. I also think there's a lot to do in our cells, where our cells can't rev up and detox. So that's what I'm going to talk today. How can you start to remove things in your lifestyle? Let's look at this really simple. Number one, when it comes to kiddos on the spectrum, if you see behaviors, they're hyper excited, they have stimming, toe walking, perhaps they have repetitive behaviors. Maybe some parents have told me over the years they line up their toys. These are called stims. So I want to let you know that oftentimes in this brain, I tell parents this, it's like a seesaw balancing act, right? You rev up the gas pedal and you slow it down. One is called glutamate, so let's talk about that. MSG. My favorite example is me as a trick-or-treater as a child years ago, going around and getting a bag of candy. Think of something like Skittles, dyes, colors, yummy stuff, right? But all of those dyes and colors in those candies can rev up your brain. So imagine for a second having your kids at Idlewild Park or maybe taking them to Kennywood and they're revving on the gas pedal. They're full throttle. They don't sleep well. They're stimming. In school, they talk incessantly. They're driving you bonkers at home because they just don't turn it off. So I've told parents this over the years. Think of it as being at a pet store with your kiddos and you see a hamster on the wheel and going round and round and round. That little hamster's turning gears in their head. That's gas pedal, that's glutamate. So remove, right? That's our step one. Remove glutamate. Dyes, colors, preservatives. And when you become a patient in our office, step number one, I give you this complete list of what to remove in terms of MSG containing foods. All right? So let's look at its counterpart there, what slows things down. If you parents out there like me, my wife and I, we have two kids, they're now 6 and 8. Actually, the little one's soon to be 7 here in just days now. But anyhow, my kids used to watch this show, and there was a character on there, and he said, "Yo, gabba gabba." So I always tell parents this, GABA, G-A-B-A, is something out there that's like the brake pedal. In my world, what does that look like? It looks like a paleo diet. It looks like a gluten-free diet, a dairy-free diet. Why? Because these foodstuffs elicit response in the brain. They kind of tickle the brain membrane, if you know what I'm saying. And I always make this analogy. Years ago, my brother and I would be sitting in church, and my mom and dad would be telling us to be quiet. My brother's elbowing me, pushing me, kicking me. We're having a good old time, of course, but my mom's like, "Kids, boys, settle down." So the same thing applies here. We're revving it up, you got to slow it down, okay? So what can I do to balance GABA? We run food allergy tests. We use multiple tests to look not only at allergies, but something called sensitivities. And biospeak, in terms of biology and medicine, it's something called an IgG antibody. But anyhow, we identify food allergies that, like my brother hitting me, tickle your kid's brain too much and make them go bonkers and feel wild. All right? So what can we do for this yo gabba gabba? There's nutrients as well. In our practice, we run a test called the organic acid test. It's a urine test that looks at neurotransmitters. Things like GABA, glutamate, serotonin. So I don't shoot blindly. I don't just do this one-size-fits-all, cookie-cutter approach. at Innovative Family Wellness with me, Dr. Noah, I take the time to get to know your child, understand what their problems are, and figure out if there's sources in their diet that are triggering it, and then what to do to relax it. So after we run this organic acid test, I look, do you need support with GABA? We can use it straight. In fact, there's forms that are really cool. It crosses the blood-brain barrier. And that's what my background in biology, many of you know me for years. 20 years ago, I was in school to be a biologist. I wanted to be a teacher, actually. And I went for biology training. So now, some 20 years later, this has really paid off because all the biochemistry I really, really like. All right? So this test reveals that imbalance. All right, so when we talk about remove, I'm going to take this and apply this to everybody. Cancer, MS, neurological, autoimmune, inflammatory disease. Look around your house. Please, everybody, if I can tell you to do one thing, go to the water source right now today, and I say no tap, please. If your preference is reverse osmosis, spring water, distilled water, in fact, we use that for a lot of people detoxifying, that's a great idea. But first of all, remove, right? This is just step number 1 here on how to work with kiddos with autism spectrum disorder and change their behavior through diet. Go in your kitchen, change your tap water. All right. Number 2, when you're looking around, why not try the gluten milk-free diet, right? Take out the bread, the pasta, the milk, and why? My grandmother told me I should drink milk, right? I always get that response. Grandma said vitamin D, strong bones, big muscles, good teeth, right? We know that. In fact, my kids are told that still right now when they're going to school. They get that same message. But we know now that milk and wheat products, again, cross that barrier. I always tell this for kids and parents, just new to this whole diet concept. Think of your beach vacation, and you're alongside the beach, and your kids are building what? Sandcastles, right? They have their buckets and their digging tools, and it's a beautiful sunny day. And what do they put around the castle? A moat and then a fortress, right? So this thing called the blood-brain barrier is just like that. It's like the fortress around the castle. However, these little tricksters, dairy proteins and wheat proteins, so yeah, I'm sorry to offend anyone out there who's Italian, but you think of it this way, pizza, lasagna, pasta, right? They're going to be big-time offenders. Unfortunately, they're going to cross through your moat, get inside your head, and basically break down your sandcastle. What I mean, meltdown, breakdown. So what are you looking for as a parent, if that could be an issue? Many kids come to see me, and their parents say they've been worked up for a seizure disorder, and they've had an EEG of the brain, in other words, a brain study. They've had an MRI of the brain, and everything is normal. But they have this zoning out, what I call my space cadet moments, and many adults can relate here. My adult patients with low thyroid, candida, yeast, brain fog, food allergies. But with wheat and dairy, they create opioids. And do you know something interesting? Opioids are something they test on what? Drug tests, right? My father ran a towboat for years in the Monongahela River, and I remember the Coast Guard years ago, 20 years ago, was testing for opioids. Why? Because they have a brain-altering effect, okay? So anybody who's had a job, maybe a truck driver, a boat operator, an airplane pilot, knows the dangers of opioids. Guys, this is real stuff. It crosses the blood-brain barrier and it affects your kiddos. At least try that. But if you want specifics, again, we offer the cutting-edge testing from labs like CIRAX and ALCAT and many other tests that we do to identify these food sensitivities, to find out should you remove that in your child. Okay, so how about that for remove? I'm going to take you upstairs now in your house, right? And then I'm going to take you downstairs. Upstairs in your house, let's go in the bathroom. Look out for fluoride toothpaste. I'm going to tell you right now, let's lower the sugars, balance their calcium and minerals, and watch for the fluoride in the toothpaste. I get the American Dental Association idea, strengthen enamel. However, that thing in toothpaste can disrupt this little gland down here called your thyroid gland. So your kid might be constipated, right? So many of the kiddos on the spectrum have constipation. Hi, Stephanie. Thanks for coming in. Glad you joined us. And everyone else, too, jump in this morning as we talk. So I'm in your bathroom here, guys. Scary thought, isn't it? I know. Look around other chemicals. Ladies, men, antiperspirants, right? We do it every morning. We're putting aluminum in. Unfortunately, aluminum is toxic and linked to the brain, and it can get into your brain gears like sticking a fork into your bicycle, right? Years ago, I used to race BMX bike. I grew up in the South Hills. There was a real famous track out there called the BMX bike track in South Park. And I always used to turn my sprocket and pump, pump, pump and do the jumps. Now I like to ride road bike. Think of it this way. You're cruising along on your road bike, your mountain bike, or something cool like that. And all of a sudden, hey, Becky and Travis, thanks for coming in. Good morning. And all of a sudden, a stick pops up, jumps into your sprocket, the gears halt, you grind, you fall off. Aluminum does that in your brain, right? It's like this little fork inside your gears in your head that causes you that moment of, whoa, I had a brain fart, right? Don't your kids say that? Mine do. Okay, so anyhow, metals. Keep looking around your bathroom. What are you cleaning your bathroom with? These cleaners and tile things and tub cleaners and toilet cleaners, unfortunately, they bioaccumulate. What do I mean by that? I told you before I studied biology for years. In fact, I have a degree in it. Wanted to be a teacher. The thing is this. They accumulate in your body like you're not taking out the trash. So let's face it. I tell my kids all the time, guys, did you take out the trash? Hey guys, it's garbage night. How about some help here, right? What I'm saying here is this. You've got to take out the trash. These things accumulate, toxins in. If you don't spit them back out, it's like not emptying the trash can, right? Pretty dirty. So what happens here? Brain fog, headaches, malaise, fatigue. I hope a lot of you now get where I'm coming from here. Let's go downstairs in your house. Remember, this is just step one I'm telling you about with kiddos with autism spectrum disorder. Again, honoring April, Autism Awareness Month. Down in the basement, take a sniff. If it seems like it's your college library, your grandmother's basement, your grandmother's garage, something's wrong. What do I mean by that? Do you ever walk into a courthouse and you end up feeling this smell? That's usually mold. Hey, Morgan, great question there. I see bleach. Yeah, absolutely. In fact, thinking of mold toxicity, many people think that bleach can clean. Hey, why not try something natural? Good old vinegar and lemon juice. That'd be amazing, right? And there's some neat recipes we have using Melaleuca oil. I know tons of you out there are big into essential oils, so I really appreciate this question on bleach. Why not using some Maluka, some lemon, and some vinegar, mix that together, and there you go, presto, cleaning. In fact, it's really interesting too, there's neat ways to get rid of mold in the house. But many of you don't know, when you go in your basement, here's what happens. Sinus congestion, red eyes, you start to sneeze or wheeze, it brings on headaches. Or you go down there and you think, geez, what did I come down here for? Kind of like you ever have a day when you're wearing your sunglasses and they're up here, and you're asking people, where are my sunglasses? And they kind of look at you and chuckle. Same thing, right? You come down there and you have that old, as kids say, brain fart, okay? Everyday mental malfunction. I call you people the walking wounded and the vertically ill. So what's pretty cool about this is mold toxicity exists. Look in that basement too. It's an interesting thing, your filter, right? If you're recirculating that bad air all the time, you can have allergies to pets and bugs and dust mites and pet dander. Hey, good morning, Wendy. Thanks for chiming in. I'm talking about your home right now and things to remove. Remove and identify mold, and we do mold testing at the clinic. It's specialized markers that we use in urine and blood to identify if there's mold toxicity. And by the way, you can get these kits at your home, like Lowe's and Home Depot, your neighborhood hardware stores. Ace is the place, right? Isn't that the commercial? You can buy those type of kits and test for mold. Big time overlooked thing. Look around the caulking in the shower, smell it, right? I always say it's like going in grandma's basement or in your college library or perhaps in a local courthouse. The minute you open that door and it wafts and hits you in the face, boom, there it is. All right, so we talked about removal here, okay? What are we going to remove? We're going to identify food allergies and remove them. We're also going to identify anything in the home that is toxic. The personal products of hygiene, the chemicals, the solvents, the cleaners, the molds. So go in your basement, go in your garage, look around, start identifying. And guys, if you don't think this thing called heavy metal toxicity is real, it's very real. I've been practicing functional medicine for 13 years, and I've been checking metals in the following way. A hair test, a urine test, a stool test, and blood test. We now know in Pittsburgh, unfortunately, for years now, the water's been contaminated with lead. Right? What does that mean? You know that saying, get the lead out? You're sluggish, you're lethargic, you're dull. Kids have what? Headaches, mental dullness, and belly pains. And the kiddos that I treat are nonverbal. My heart goes out to them and their parents. It's so sad that so many times they really can't communicate to us what's going on when there's mental toxicity. So when you become a patient, we test in these ways. Again, the hair, urine, stool, and blood, mental toxicity. Okay, so that's step number one. So I hope that really helped about removal of things in the condition where children have been diagnosed on the autism spectrum disorder. All right, number two now, restore. I'm going to drive you right down to the microbiome in your gut. So many patients come in, what probiotics do I use? What do you think about kefir? What do you think about kombucha, right? What do you think about bone broth? I've been doing this for years and I have plenty to say about it. But on this topic of restore, we're going to the gut. And that's a great question. It just said, how do you get blood from our kids? Easy peasy, as the kids say, lemon squeezy. All you got to do is go to pediatric-based labs. I personally have and connected with nurses who do in-home draws. That's extremely valuable. They're just great. And they just love on kids. They come in, they make it fun, hold the iPad, hold a stuffed animal. So getting blood to test for nutrient levels or lead levels, in this case I was talking about, no problem. I always say, just make sure you go. Becky, thanks for joining us, by the way. Say hi to Travis and the kids. But just make sure to go someone who's going to love on your kids and be really gentle, and blood draws with kids are no problem. And sometimes it's really helped too. We'll use a little papoose board, okay, a board, and then a little bit of numbing agent cream. That can be extremely helpful too. So I can tell you, when you use these type of things, the blood draws can be easy peasy, all right? So moving on about restore, go to the gut. The gut is the trigger for so many problems. So many times over the years, we found out that the human microbiome is messed up. All right, here's the deal. It's spring now, right? Easter's about a week away. Think about walking out into your lawn and you're saying, honey, did you fertilize? Honey, did you aerate? Honey, why does our yard have clover and dandelions and weeds in it and everyone else's yard looks great? Do you want to kill off everything? Do you want to use Roundup and glyphosate in your gut? Heck no. And you shouldn't on your lawns as well. And there's some really cool natural products that we recommend people use for the lawns. So that's another point. Back to the gut microbiome. When I was back in school, 1993 at Penn State Barron up in Erie, we were doing soil sampling. So my background at that time, I was studying ecology. So it's gut ecology. I take a sample of your poop just like we would take a sample of your soil in your yard, right? Too much nitrogen, not enough phosphorus, same concept. Find out if your kid's gut is inflamed and irritated, and there's specific markers. They actually have names. They're called SIGA, they're called lactoferrin, and these different parameters, in addition to other ones, they can give me biomarkers as your child's gut inflamed. There's also a really cool test. We have kids and adults blow into tubes to find out if they have small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. So ladies, just to digress for 1 second, have you ever had a urinary tract infection and you're told to take an antibiotic? Or maybe you take some cranberry or some D-mannose, echinacea, olive leaf, vitamin C, catch my drift? And unfortunately, you're told you have an infection in your bladder. And there's burning, urgency, frequency, fever, pain, chills, night sweats. Ugh, you feel terrible. Do you know that the bladder should be relatively sterile, just like your kiddo's gut, and just like your gut actually? So when we culture the stool, we often find these markers, white blood cells, inflammatory markers, and there's bad bugs in there. So what we do in this case is test that microbiome and start to restore the gut. How? Well, this is the beauty of functional medicine. We remove, right? Get out the food allergies, get out the Roundup, the glyphosate, the sugar, the yeast, the pro-inflammatory agents. We remove that so it stops the fire. People, by the way, with IBS, Crohn's disease, please, if you've ever been told that food does not matter, it does. It's no different. Remember as a kid, when your buddy next to you in school, I don't know, I went to Bethel Park, maybe this is just a Bethel Park thing, but they'd take an eraser and grind you and kind of burn you there just joking around, or give you a noogie on the head. It's that kind of principle. The food is interacting with your gut membrane and causing inflammation. So remove it after we identify it. But that microbiome is the specific and the heart of the brain, right? It's that gut-brain connection. Gut on fire, brain on fire. Restore the gut. I have taken great painstaking detail and effort over the 13 plus years in doing this of perfecting antimicrobials to help kill bugs. Probiotics, kefir, bone broth, but it matters on your child's stool test. We've gotten it now down to we can identify what bug is present and use specific natural antimicrobials that get at the root cause of the problem. So if you're just saying, geez, I'm taking a probiotic, but I really don't know why. I've changed my diet, but I'm really not sure if I should be avoiding dairy, gluten, eggs, nightshades, and you don't quite know why, or you're becoming paleo, or you're following different diets. Heck, this is the reason for testing. What else do we have to restore? This is really, really cool when it comes to restoration in kiddos. We have to restore deep inside the cell the function. So think of it this way. You're driving along on your road, maybe you have a nice fancy car, and that light comes on your dashboard, and you hear clang, 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 clang. You could put a piece of tape and cover it up and keep on going. That might be analogous to taking a medication, covering up the symptoms, not asking what is the root cause of the problem. Well, in this case, we have to restore cell function. You know, I grew up, like I said, in the 70s, and I remember those things called revolving doors. In fact, our local Giant Eagle still has one, and my kids love it. Toxins in, toxins out. Principle is this. People go in that door, and people go out of that door, right? People go in, people go out. Air, water, pollutants, foods, chemicals. We breathe, ingest this stuff all the time, all right? Toxins come in, they bioaccumulate. How do we get them out is the question. When we get inside the cell, almost like now you bring your car into a garage, open up the hood and say to the mechanic, what's going on inside my car? The spark plug might be bad, okay? You have a firing or a motor problem. So maybe here's a thought and a solution here. When we do specific testing through companies that specialize at cell-level nutrition, we actually run blood markers here and find out, are your mitochondrial working? Whoa! Basically, is your spark plug burnt out, worn out, and time for a change? And what happens is many kiddos on the spectrum have not necessarily true mitochondrial disease, but we have disorder. So in other words, deep inside your motor, something's really wrong. You know, we can all pull into like a quick lube place or something and get the oil changed, but I'm talking about now going to the specialist to find out deep inside my car's motor, like going back to the dealership or something, what's going on in my motor. These tests tell me, can you pump out the junk by using this thing called mitochondrial? Here's another huge point when it comes to restoration. Guys, this is only topic number 2, right? In my whole membrane, so huge. This whole category of inflammation at the cell level is big now, right? To feel well, fix the cell, okay? So microscopic level, follow with me here. As I said, I'm a bio major from way back when. I love this stuff. Take this sort of action camera in your body, fly down in, right? Cells are those microscopic things that make up organs and glands, okay? That then make up the system, that then make up the body as a whole. So that's kind of you, right? So we'll let the cell. If that membrane is inflamed because of what? Viruses, right? Herpes 1, herpes 2, herpes 6. If it's inflamed because of chronic yeast, candida, toxicity from bacteria. If it's inflamed because food allergies, things don't get in. So it's like saying this. I got the best octane under the sun, right? I had an old car way back in the day and I used to run 94 octane from Sunoco in it, okay? They said it was the highest octane under the sun. I remember the commercial very well. I paid a lot of money for that gas back in the day too. That octane helped my big V8 motor run pretty well. You've got to put the good fuel in. If you can't get the fuel to the cell, it's no different than your car dying out because you don't have the right fuel pump, okay? So you can't get the junk in or out, and you can't get the good stuff in. So restore the cell membrane. At my office, we have tests that look for cellular inflammation. There's some really fantastic labs out there. We've partnered with good companies like Cerex. that do inflammatory panel checking to find out, is that cell membrane inflamed? And it's really cool. You look at neurological inflammation. So we're asking, the stuff I put in my body, the stuff that accumulates in my body from things like dental amalgams, antiperspirant, cookware, aluminum, baking powder, vaccines and medicines, does this stuff eventually accumulate in my body and cause inflammation around the cell? So we have to be gentle. We use things like omega-3 fatty acids and get the omega-6 and the omega-9 in balance to soften that cell membrane. Something else that's critically involved here in restoration of the body cell membrane, and this is still part of Restore, is restoring methylation. Huge topic, okay? Methylation, nobody should freak out here. We don't need to go into science guru mode. Think of water. Have you ever said to somebody, hey, I want some good old H2O, just some water? Well, methylation is CH3. If your body's lacking the ability to methylate, and I'm going to pop a buzzword on you, MTHFR gene testing is at the epicenter of this whole thing. I've been doing this now for years, looking at genetic testing to find out, can you methylate? All I'm saying, hey, a methyl is a C and an H and a couple other H's, so it's one C, three H's, no big deal, but it activates things in your body. It makes that happy, feel-good chemical in your brain called serotonin click and tick, which later converts to melatonin for a good night's sleep. So how many kiddos, the parents say, I don't get it. My kid seems angry. They throw tantrums. They seem to have fits. They don't sleep well. They seem to have mood disorder. In school, they're hitting, they're biting, they're name calling. Aaron, hey, good morning. Nice to see you. Say hi to Daniel and the kiddos too. So oftentimes, these brain chemicals are out of balance. So unfortunately, serotonin and dopamine are made with methylation. And so many people have genetic predisposition. I always tease and say you can't pick your parents, but you can pick your methyl groups, okay? So we've all heard about methyl B12. 13 plus years ago, I was gung-ho about methyl B12 to get methylation going. Then as genetics hit the scene years ago, when the Human Genome Project broke, we now could get it on a microbiotic level to find out, can you do this tricky thing called methylation? Think of it this way, it's just a chemical dance, right? You ever go to a line dancing or something like that, or ballroom dancing? It's just changing a partner, switching back and forth. So your body takes a brain chemical, boom, now you take the happy, feel-good serotonin, and you're sleeping with melatonin. That's huge right there. You also take dopamine, and that all-elusive speech is intertwined right there. Again, a process of restoring methylation. Do you realize that most of the drugs for ADD, ADHD are actually wrapped up in that pathway of dopamine? And next to its little dance partner, that gene in your body called MTHFR, there's another one there called COMT. It's called catechol-O-methyltransferase. And all it does, it takes some amino acids like D-L-phenylalanine and tyrosine, and it changes them into dopamine. There's your attention, teachers, right? You want that for your kids and your students. There all of a sudden is the attention and the reward and mood stabilization. Lovely as a teacher and even better probably as a parent. Then what happens is that dopamine converts into something called adrenaline. So why do so many medicines like Ritalin and Adderall and Concerta work in this pathway? They're trying to get the kids to focus. So what we do at Innovative Family Wellness is use genetic testing with nutrition to restore methylation. So it's so cool. People come to me all the time and say, should my kid take vitamin D? Heck yeah, right? I don't think I've ever, in 13 plus years of practice, maybe but 3 times, have seen a person, after thousands of tests, that has a vitamin D level too high. But do you want to know why you can't get it high? So many people say, take 10,000, 5,000, 2,000 IUs a day. I'm out in the sun, I eat egg yolks, I eat sardines, and I can't get my vitamin D high. Why? There's a gene there called VDR. It's a vitamin D gene. Super cool when we look at it with genetics and methylation. So it's really neat. Again, think of your bicycle. You're chugging along, pedaling on a beautiful day like this, and you have sprockets and gears. If this whole thing called methylation isn't humming and jiving and grooving, You don't keep a consistent amount of brain chemicals. Parents, grandparents, what does that mean? Mood swings. One day, right, it's Dr. J and Heckle, right? Dr. Heckle and Jide. So what do we have here? One day you come down, your kid's super happy, right? There he is, okay? Mr. Heckle, Dr. J. Wow, what's going on? He's happy, he's euphoric. The next day, he's crying, he's sad, he doesn't want to go to school, and you're thinking, what happened? And sometimes, even within the course of just hours, your kids are changing. So unfortunately, you're like, who is this kid? Yesterday he was happy, he was bright, he seemed great of mood and kind and generous to his siblings. And today, oh, geez, it's a terror. I don't know what to get, I'm holding on. So unfortunately, what happens here is this personality disorder is wrapped up in methylation. And here's something else too. This applies to adults as well. Grandparents tune up too. There's a pathway beyond that good old-fashioned MTHFR when we're trying to restore methylation, right? Good old step 2 here, restore methylation. Where there's a gene beyond that called the transsulfuration, get a load of this, secret, right? Anti-aging pathway. So we all are excited about drinking vitamin C in our orange juice, or maybe having grapefruit, try to get some extra vitamin C, right? Maybe a good kind of thing to do when you're cold, have a flu or something. Well, remember this. There's an antioxidant called glutathione that's made here, and this is so important for getting toxins out of the body for children. So again, when you're restoring, we offer the genetics testing. I've been interpreting these tests for years. So here's what it looks like. If you're ever to come, you're my patient perhaps, or you've come to the clinic before, I lay it all out. I put the genetics test in the middle. It's kind of the epicenter or the cog in the wheel. In and around this, I lay out the nutritional test. There's my food allergies. There's my neurological inflammatory panel, right? Looking at NF-kappa B and then all these crazy cytokines and leukotrienes that are inflamed, causing your brain on fire thing, right? I look at a stool test, good bugs, bad bugs. Do you need digestive enzymes? Maybe you're just not digesting food. And in fact, here's a great point to stop. Do you know something? 20 years ago, I was a patient who had what? Chronic fatigue, anxiety, and constipation. I had a stool test run. So I'm no new kid on the block to this kind of thing. This is 20 years ago. You know what I needed? Good old hydrochloric acid. So how many times was I running to the pantry to grab what? Not a bottle of beer. No way. I had enough yeast going on in my gut to, make brew for the whole neighborhood. I was drinking apple cider vinegar. That hydrochloric acid stimulus helps so many people with indigestion, acid reflux, constipation. I can attest. I get it. I've been there. I can relate to brain fog. I've had yeast. Anyhow, the stool test is right there in front of me. Love that test. Little sort of a personal connection there, if you will. Then I do my organic acid test, right? It's laying right there in front of me. I can start to look at this. Why is this part of the body not producing what it should? Because genes say that it should or shouldn't. I've got my heavy metal test over here. For young kids, the hair test works great. Maybe the urine test for older kids or stool test, they all work really well. Do some blood testing, whatever it takes. So I look at all this stuff out in front of me, and I tell people this. I have a practice out in Ohio, and a little bit north of that practice, they make Chevy Cruzes, right? Very proud to say we have a car here made in the United States. As I used to work for U.S. Steel for 4 years, so, try to keep that American pride thing going in some good old-fashioned American steel, right? Makes me feel good. So I like this example. The Chevy Cruze, you've got a factory, kind of like the blueprint, your genes, that says I should make a brand new fancy Chevy Cruze, okay? Inlines to this, though, maybe I want the best, hyped up model, souped up model, you'd say, all blinged out, and I want a sunroof, I want leather seats, I want the sport wheels. Things should be coming in that factory, and then if I'd stand back from the factory, I'd probably see smoke coming out of the smokestack. Maybe I'd see some water dumping out into a nearby river as waste products were coming from the factory running. So look at it this way. Your genetic blueprint's like the factory making the car. This is what you should make. But if you're not putting in the right raw materials, you're not putting in the best, Bose radio with 9 speakers or something, right? You're not putting those into the factory, the end product is not maybe what you hope for. Maybe you get the basic car, the basic model, which is perfectly fine, but I tell people in health, I don't want to be normal. I don't want to fit this crazy norm range. I want to be optimal. So think of the old bell-shaped curve, right? When we look at these values, like thyroid testing is major, we have this range for some reason. Do you realize that's on the normal population? Probably the population who thinks it's okay to go through menopause and feel yucky and icky and tired and have no libido and have dry skin and constipation. Probably the norm who feels that if you wake up and you have brain fog and you feel grouchy and you're tired and you can't sleep, that's that norm range. That's how they derive it, based on the population of normal. I want to be optimal. So in car speak, right? I want maybe the sunroof, the leather, the fancy radio, and the sport wheels. That's what I'm talking about. I want to drive that car, maybe down the street, okay? So again, everything you put in matters as to what you get out the next day. So again, I have two boys. What am I talking about? It's breakfast time, all right? It's breakfast time and my kids sit down. What I put in their body is going to make a difference of how they perform in school. No different than taking that fancy Chevy off the line and putting some high-octane gas in it, keeping everything running good, and driving down the street. All right? So restoration, that's what I'm talking about. So in summary, under step 2 of working with kids with autism spectrum disorder, using this approach called biomedical supplement and support, all right? Or maybe some people say biological. It was so cute. Years ago, I had this one lady come to me. She was a news reporter for WKBN up in Ohio, and they were going to interview me. And she came out and she said, so I really like this program called Biological Autism. She said, I'm here today to learn more about this and interview you. And I said, did you just say biological? And I thought for a minute, and I thought, thank you, Lord. I thought, that makes a lot of sense to me. We've always called it biomedical. Yeah, the testing's medical. Sure, I test their thyroid, their complete blood count, their lipid panel, their vitamin D level. These are scripts I write all day long. I check their B12 level, their methylmalonic acid level, their folic acid level. Been doing this for years. But I thought to myself, good grief, that is logical. It's just logical. It's like driving your car on crummy gas. So biological, okay? Step 2 of biological, restore. Restore methylation, restoring the cell membrane, shutting out inflammation means what? Restoring probably your sanity when it comes to kids who have behavior disorders and problems. So yes, if you want my opinion, autism spectrum disorder has a biological link. All right? Okay, number 3 here today. And thanks everyone still for hanging in there with me. I know this is a little bit long, but in honor of April, Autism Awareness Month, I thought I'd just share what's on my heart with you this morning and pour this out to everybody listening, okay? Reestablish methylation, hang on, means reestablishing myelination. All right, so here's an example. Years ago, working as a chiropractor, I had a little boy come to the office, cute as can be, 5 years old, and still wetting the bed at night, all right? So that reflex or something was goofy there. So he went to see his pediatrician. Makes sense. They ran a urine analysis. We checked him as well on urine, doing a quick dip in the office. A-okay. No signs of infection, right? Those different markers you'd find. White blood cells, nitrites, specific gravity. A-okay. Kid passed with flying colors. So I'm taking a full history. Made sure he had an ultrasound of his bladder. He passed everything with flying colors. So as a chiropractic physician in functional medicine, I'm using palpation along his spine, and I press on the second lumbar vertebra. It's the spot in your back, if you kind of fish around in the curve of your back when you're driving your car, it's that spot that's sometimes a little bit tender. He jumps up and has to run and use the bathroom. Thought, wow, that's interesting. That's the hardwiring of the vertebra in the spine to the bladder. Could it be possible that a second low back vertebra was out of place and it needed set back in to restore bladder function? Absolutely, right? So I gave him a series of 6 chiropractic adjustments using something called cranial sacral therapy, of which I'm trained in, been doing it for years. I was able to set his lumbar 2 vertebra back in place. Voila, no more bedwetting, huge savings on diapers, right? And washing sheets. I get it. We've been there. We've had kids, they're still grown up. So you're getting the connections. But there's something else. Anyone ever out there think about how your light turns on overhead? You walk into a dark room, you hit the switch. Well, behind that wall, even though you can't see it, somehow, kind of like the chiropractic connection from the spine to the organ, that light switch told that light to work. There's a coating around that called myelination. It's like the wrapping around the wire. I tease people and say it's the hot dog bun around the hot dog. That's how kids relate to it. Here's what can happen. If you're not properly methylating, if you have heavy metal toxicity, if you have sugar in your diet, if you have a viral load, a parasitical load, toxic metals, you can inflame that coating. What might that sound like later on? Multiple sclerosis. What might that sound like, and I suffered from it? Neuropathy. Do you know that 20 years ago, when I was in my early 20s, I had a condition called stocking glove paresthesia, or what they called polyneuropathy. My hands and my feet burned and tingled. Why? I'll confess right now. I committed my crime and my sins, if you will, in the grocery store. It might look cute and innocent when I was proclaimed as Papa John's Pizza #1 customer, and I'd be in Giant Eagle buying the 2-for-1 ice creams, or maybe the Shop and Save BOGOs, the buy one get one free ice creams. I was the guy, I told people this, I would jump through a wall to get sugar when I was in a fix, almost like an addict. And do you know out there listening that the receptors for sugar in your brain share the same docking sites for cocaine? So you don't want to tell me that this sugar is not a powerful addiction? I had it. Ladies, when you're single, you eat for 1. If you're pregnant, you eat for 2, right? You and the cute little babe inside. If you're having twins, you're eating for 3. Check this out. This is many, and it was me. I had bad bacteria in my gut. I had yeast in my gut and all through my body. So guess who I was feeding? Yeah, just this dude right here, but there were 100 and millions, thousands of our little guys inside called yeast that I couldn't get enough. So can you hear me? Can you relate? You ever eat dinner, and like an hour later, you're thinking, geez, I gotta get a bowl of cereal. Geez, I need a dish of ice cream. Geez, it feels like I haven't eaten anything. I'm so hungry. It's no different than the yeast eating before you, like you would if you're pregnant and the baby kind of takes your food first. That was my problem. So do you realize this? When you have these sugar addiction problems, you can create this major inflammatory process. So not to digress, but something very personal, I can relate to many of your children with autism spectrum disorder. I had brain fog. I had memory loss. I had a space cadet kind of a mind. And several years ago, I had something called Lyme disease. I was out on a Christmas tree farm with my wife and kids, and we cut down a Christmas tree. But 4 or 5 days later, I felt a bump on my backside bathing, and I told my wife, I said, geez, there's something like a pimple back here. I can't see it. What is this thing? And she just steps back and rears and says, oh no, Noah, she said, you have a tick in you. Well, it wasn't long, and hear this, despite negative Lyme testing, I said, on blood work with reflex to Western blot negative, I had Lyme disease. So brain fog, everyday mental malfunction, confusion, joints that hurt, wanting to be antisocial. Does that sound familiar? Me walking into a crowd would be like you walking into a burning building. I want out of there. I'm in panic mode. What does that sound like with children? You know, these kids might present in a social situation as awkward. Maybe not the one to socialize. You might say maybe not the life of the party. I've been there. I know what that's like when you walk and you feel, I just don't have the words today. I have nothing important to say. I feel foggy. If I meet you and try to remember your name, I'll forget your name. Okay? I understand how infections can influence this whole process called myelination. They can inflame that delicate membrane, and where is it? Let me bring you back to real space and time. It's your brain. It is your brain. Lindsay, hey, good morning. Thanks for coming in. I'm up here in my head right now. I hope you are too. It's this coating around your brain neurons called myelination. It's the same wrapping that wraps around the nerve that goes to the bladder. So if kids have problems bedwetting, it can be a problem of the wrapping of the wire called methylation. I had this problem too. So I want to be real with y'all. You know, it kind of reminds me of being in church when we just sit back and say, hey, we're all sinners. Can we now be real with each other? I had yeast. I had metal poisoning. And as vain and crazy as this sounds, you know where I got my metal poisoning? Way back in the day, I used to work out with my best friend in high school, and we'd eat what? Tuna fish. Day after day, cans of tuna fish. You would have thought I was a cat, an alley cat. I ate so much tuna fish. I became mercury poisoned. I get the brain fog. I get the everyday mental malfunction. So I never look at a child and say, come on, just fit in. Come on, what's wrong with you? Come on, why don't you be quiet? Stop reprimanding the behavior and for just one moment, have an ounce of empathy and compassion and understand that people like me who've been there in the woes of depression, anxiety, and brain fog, there's a voice inside of us crying out to be heard. You know, there's someone special inside your kid who wants to be heard. But if they're inundated with a sea of toxicity, chemicals, soap, shampoos, medicines, preservatives, chemicals, you feel crappy. You know, I've never drank in my life enough to get drunk or anything like that. It's not my gig. We don't even do it at all. But I can tell you this, it feels like you're drunk, okay? When you have yeast inside your body and you're inflaming and you're trying to interfere with this process, what I call methylation, you feel really, really sour. So if I can be real with you, I can identify with this syndrome. So now in real life with your child, attention, socialization, speech, and how do we define autism again, right? My personal view is this. Autism spectrum disorder is multifactorial. It's rooted in genetic predisposition. I always tease and say you can't pick your parents, but you can pick your methyl groups, okay? So that's what we do, genetic testing here at the office. Many labs do. Some spit, right? Saliva testing, some blood. What else? It's underlying gut autoimmune problems. I've been there, done that. Yeast, parasites, bacteria, viruses, as I said before, restore the gut membrane, and there's tests at the office to identify. That's what helped me some 20 years ago, having a complete digestive stool analysis, finding out I couldn't break down my foods. They crossed my blood-brain barrier and made me feel like a space cadet. What else here? I feel personally that it is an issue of methylation and mitochondrial. Again, it's a spark plug I talked about today. So it's the spark plug in the body not working. And there's ways to test for that. We look at levels on blood, lactate levels, alanine levels, pyruvate levels, the organic acid test, glutathione levels, and we check these parameters to make sure if you're working right. So I think it's a big thing too, neurotransmitters. But before you go chasing yourself, you people with depression, anxiety, kids with OCD, ADD, ADH, before you're trying the next latest, greatest drug, look inside of you to get well, right? Look at the gut microbiome. Look for food allergies. I am the poster child of that. Years ago, for 5 years, I did talk radio, okay? And I would get on the show, and I would try to be Mr. Science and talk about thyroid and brain fog and Lyme disease and chronic fatigue and the gut microbiome. This goes back 13 years ago. I had an hourly radio program, and I talk about all this stuff. You know what I found out? When I told people I've been there and I've done that and I can relate, like it kind of said, almost like being in church and say, hey, I get it, you know, I messed up too. You know, I can do better too. I've been there. So I can tell you what that feels like to feel not well. So again, to get well, fix the cell. When it comes to this whole thing, restoring this whole process of detoxification and methylation is major. So, let me give you a case now, okay? I love this case. Years ago, when I was starting a practice in Ohio, we had a boy come to us from Cleveland. He was 7 years old, underweight, and had major speech delay. I always tell parents this, that all elusive speech, right? Antennas have got to be up, okay? Think of like my little rabbit ears here in honor of Easter, I guess. I'm looking at myself here. Rabbit ears up, receptive speech, and then you got to vocalize it. That is your expressive speech. Things have got to be heard, kind of interpreted by the brain, various areas inside your head, and then speech has got to happen. So what can go on? If you have metal interference, methylation interference, brain chemical imbalance interference, speech may not happen. So in this particular child's case, I evaluated him in a very different way. Yes, he'd been to the pediatrician. His mom was told to get a behavioral therapist, a speech therapist, early intervention, and work with them since age 2.5, which is great advice. I have many people that I refer to and co-refer to in the area. In fact, my wife is actually a physical therapist assistant and works with lots of kids in this manner. So, and then there's my dog, he's chiming in. So anyhow, sorry about that. This kid came to see me with speech issues, growth issues, and major disorder called autism spectrum disorder, high functioning Asperger's. And I realized after 13 years of practicing that things have changed, but anyhow, at the time, that was his working diagnosis, Asperger's, okay? So we started this test. I looked at him as a whole person. I asked his mom sources of drinking water, toothpaste, soap, shampoos. We looked at his medical record, things like medicines and reactions and vaccines and his whole toxic history. I also decided in his case that we had to look at his gut microbiome. There was a long history of projectile vomiting, acid reflux, and constipation. And this kind of typifies or personifies many of the children on the spectrum. So in looking at this way, there was one other thing I wanted to do. I looked at his diet and I could totally relate. He was a carboholic. I get it. I told you I'm not an alcoholic, but I can tell you what, I can really have some heart for people who are addicted because I had the carb thing going on, and this kid did too. His mom said I can make him the best hamburger, the best steak, chicken. He wants nothing to do with it. This kid wants tater tots. This kid wants pizza, pasta, and a PB&J, peanut butter and jelly sandwich, and he could live on that. What does he want to drink? Milk. So this kid's basically having an auto-intoxication and a self-yeast brewery in his gut. So here's what I did when we sat down on the report of finding examination. I looked at a stool test and found there was underlying candidiasis in his gut. This yeast infection. How did this happen? Tip off. If you look back on the timeline of your child's history and there's been a prolonged use of antibiotics, that can be a trigger of destroying the human gut microbiome. Number 2, he was diagnosed as asthmatic at age 4.5 and had rescue inhalers. Hey, I used to be an EMT years ago. I have nothing against a rescue inhaler, okay? I get it. We've come on the scene of many people in an asthmatic attack and had to help them through in many ways. Totally acceptable. But the prolonged use of corticosteroids in this boy's case killed off his gut microbiome. So now you're starting to build the history, right? It's his voice inside crying out to be heard. Everyone has a story. As unique as your fingerprint and your eye color, everyone has a story here that means something. So in this kid's case, we looked at his microbiome. I also did a test here of his genetics. A simple test, a spit test. See my little pen right here? Easy peasy. He filled up a test tube about yay big. And for kids out there who can't do that, we can do the swabs in the mouth, no big deal, and we can do blood testing. He had the classic MTHFR A1298C gene, which means what? What the heck is that? It means that the active type of folic acid that's utilized by most people to make their brains click and tick, he wasn't able to do that conversion, all right? So now I'm building a profile. Could his gut on fire affect this? Yes. I've been there, I've done that. If your pediatrician tells you that's not true, or a medical specialist tells you not true, talk to me. I have actually lived in the body of someone with systemic chronic candidiasis and constipation, and had the days where I tell people, you don't want me balancing your checkbook, and you don't even want me trying to give you simple change. I used to be a paper boy years ago, and I thought, I couldn't even break change for $1 right now. I'm in such a fix, you have no idea. Fogged out, all right? So we looked at this in his case. Hey, good morning, Brian. Glad you joined us. If you have any questions, you or Lindsay or anyone else out there listening, come ahead. So I'm telling about a kid here from Ohio that I saw recently and had a great turnaround. So we have his A1298C genetic test, looking also into a gene called MTRR, B12. For years, confession, did this wrong. Almost every one of my patients got whopping doses of methyl B12, had no idea, okay? Until we saw these gene SNPs, MTHFR, MTRR, I could make it bio-individual. So this whole thing about a bio-individualized diet, right? A paleo diet, oxalate diet, MSG-free diet. We have these neat kind of diets we use with sulfite-sensitive asthmatic kids like him. The gene SNP called CBS helped me understand that he should be on a reduced sulfur diet. So the cool thing is this. We sit down, we change his diet. No big deal, right? Some things have to go out, some things go in. And please, for parents out there, if you're panicking right now thinking, there's no way my kid's going to eat anything but a toaster strudel or the good old-fashioned Pop-Tart, in the morning. There's no way my kid's going to eat anything but a tater tot and a chicken nugget at lunch. Or if you're freaking out thinking, our mainstay at dinner is a hamburger and a hot dog and some french fries and a soda or a glass of milk, be calm. When the kids feel better, just like someone losing weight and dealing with blood sugar cravings, give them about 2 weeks, that settles down. And you know what's really cool? They'll actually start to crave those foods, and that's exactly what happened in his case. We took him off the allergenic foods. It decreases histamine, decreases brain inflammation, and that brain swelling. Years ago, I was an athletic trainer, okay? I used to work for Upper St. Clair High School as a student trainer. Think of concussions, or that cool movie recently here in Pittsburgh called Concussion, CTE, chronic traumatic encephalopathy. Your brain's swelling, your poor kid hurts. Please decrease the pressure. So there's some really cool things out there in the brain. And Aaron, you came in here with a great question. Perfect time for that question. Thanks so much, Aaron. Absolutely, it's really cool. When it comes to remyelination, there's some really neat things to be done. And I'm talking about genetics right now. This applies for kids with autism spectrum disorder, which was our step 3 today, and also people with MS. You're looking at decreasing neurological inflammation and how to wrap that coat. Got to tell you this story briefly. I'll step aside and we'll get right back to that. When I was in Ohio 4.5 years ago, I was on this radio station and somebody called in and was interviewing. And they said, I got to tell you something, Dr. Erickson. We can't thank you enough. When I was 47 years old, my doctor told me to get a seeing eye dog, and then I would have to start getting my finances in order because I'd end up in a nursing home crippled. I actually treated this patient and discovered something very interesting. The link between the epigenetic influence of low vitamin D on myelination was major in that person's case. We put him on, grab a hold of your seats, 30,000 IUs of vitamin D3, clinical pearl, with vitamin K2, MK7, together to up their vitamin immune level. These are autoimmune diseases. We also identified there was underlying food allergies. I used very advanced forms of blood testing to look at IgG4, IgE antibodies combined in a white blood cell response to find out the body was under attack. So we remove, right? I said step 1 today, remove. We started to restore. We're using multiple forms of folic acid, folinic, 5-methyl tetrahydrofolate, and a special type of B12 called adenosyl B12 to start to coat again. Extremely high doses of omega-3 fatty acids, but most importantly in this case, we removed MSG. When we removed MSG, this person was drinking diet soda like I would drink water, okay? And hopefully like you would drink water, pure water that is, right? Anything but the tap, please. That question always comes up. What water? Tap water, reverse osmosis, Berkey filters, distilled water, spring water, anything but the tap, please, okay? And watch BPA in your plastic bottles too. So can myelination happen? Yes. There's a way to recreate myelination through some very interesting gene SNPs. One of them is called AHCY. When we work with people like this person from Ohio with MS, that gene is so important, it makes new and healthy cells, which goes off through a little chemical called SAMe. I don't want you to get lost. SAMe's your best friend. When I grew up in Bethel Park, it's really funny. There was a neighborhood dog. He was an old golden retriever, and his name was Sammy. And we all petted him. He just watched us play street hockey, watched us ride bikes. We should have had our helmets on back then, okay? But that was the day. We were skateboarding, and Sam was everyone's friend. When you start using Sammy, I call him this. He's like my dog friend. He's like the universal friend. He's the universal methylator. It's a free pass. So people, and Aaron out there, love this question. And like I'm telling the story of the person from Ohio, when we methylate and start using compounds like sphingomyelin and Sammy, your friend, you can start to do that. But everyone out there with any autoimmune disease, you might be dealing today with Hashimoto's thyroiditis. You might be dealing today with multiple sclerosis. You might be dealing with me like neuroinflammatory polyneuropathy, stinging, burning, tingling, numbness in my hands. My feet were freezing cold, okay? People were missing this. So what you're doing here is looking at underlying autoimmune inflammation. Take out the fire, remove the inflammation, and start to rebuild your body, all right? So that's some of the things I can say about MS. Back to this case now, and please, by the way, questions come ahead. I'm here for you today. I'm here sporting the blue today, honoring April, Autism Awareness Month. Super excited it's spring right now, and so glad to tell you about my journey and what we do with children with autism spectrum disorder. But there's parallels here. Let's face it. Aren't we perhaps to some degree all a little bit on the spectrum? I mean, we go to that uncle at Christmas time, or there's that aunt, you know, at Easter or something, and think, boy, they're a little quirky, a little odd. Hey, it's a blessing. It's a gift. It doesn't have to be fixed. It's unique in who they are. There might be people who make great accountants because they love details and numbers, and that's the way their brain works. I'm not here to change that. There might be people out there who are phenomenal scientists or going to be an astronaut someday because they have this great mind to think about quantum physics. I'm totally cool with that, all right? So the other thing here is I have great compassion for this. So when I work with your kid, I get it. I understand. So we've got to start getting this negative connotation and this stigma away from autism. Please. What I'm talking about is a kid who might be sick inside. This was me. I was 22 years old and falling asleep in the back of class in college in Penn State and Cal U, and I felt terrible. But there was a person in here who wanted to be heard. There was a person in here who had something to say. I ended up, by the way, and you can check the records if you care, I was #1 in my class in sports medicine. My mother, God love her, would sit at night and I'd have to have repetition. She'd say, Noah, this bone again, honey, is what? It's the clavicle. Noah, this bone again is what? It's the humerus. Well, it was kind of humorous. I had to have extra help. Why? Because I was fogged over here. I was a really good student in school. I love science. I love stuff, but I was losing my body because I had things come in from the outside that made me sick. And if you're going to say, wait a minute, how could my beautiful little baby be born sick? Easy. Look at the number of toxins right now in the world. Look at the number of chemicals and drugs and drinking water and contaminants, right? Remember, I told you before, living in Pittsburgh, lead was just discovered in the drinking water. This is no newsflash. Lead, mercury, arsenic, tin, titanium, cadmium, it's everywhere. There's not a child today born without toxic syndrome, okay, of metals. We have to look deeper. So this child, again, from Ohio, failure to thrive, Asperger's, how did I do it? Methylation, stool testing, food allergy testing, and guess what happens? The beautiful person that God made them to be, they could finally have the best version of them expressed. And I can say that no better than this. They could have their best version expressed. You may have unlimited potential right now as an adult to do anything you want. Your dreams, your thoughts, we all call it a bucket list, right? You're kind of writing things down. Someday I want to go back to school and be an acupuncturist. I don't know, right? That was one of my things and I did it, okay? I'm a medical acupuncturist. But when I was 23, some 20 years ago, I wasn't able to. I was wiped out, tired, chronic fatigue. There may be a child right now, like this child, who wanted to play ice hockey, which, by the way, he gained 22 pounds and was able to play ice hockey finally because guess what happened? His brain started to work. He grew. He became social. So if there's somebody inside their body and they just feel sick and can't maximize their potential, is there a biological link to autism spectrum disorder? I'm here to tell you yes. Is there a case then, if we remove toxins, identify mercury, aluminum, lead, these metals, Remove after identification of food allergies. Maybe it's corn, eggs, soy, peanuts, dairy, wheat, right? Nightshades. Remove those. Could you not remove the bad bugs from your gut and start to get better? Then we go into step 2. Restore methylation, restoring the membrane, and starting the body's organs to work better. Absolutely true. And again, if you're looking for someone who can interpret a gene test, I have been doing this for years. This is my background, this is my career, and I think it's kind of unique. As I said before, I went to Penn State, Erie, and Barron for a couple of years. I'd spend Saturday mornings fishing and the very early mornings doing soil sampling on Presque Isle. Great, beautiful mornings. We take our ice augers, bore through the ice, and take a soil sample. What would that find? Toxicity. Major influence on bioindicator species like salamanders. Rachel, I love that question. We do food allergy testing in the office. We have a multitude of ways of testing, but again, as I said, and I'm sure you're asking this question, but for those listening, just clarification, it's food allergy and sensitivity. And guys, great news. Most, if not all of that type of testing is covered by your insurance. I have taken great effort and great time to try to make this a team. I want you on my side. I don't want insurance and issues and getting in the way. The companies I deal with work and participate with insurance, so I check vitamin levels, I check food allergy levels, and that's great. That's what you meant. Fantastic job. I knew it. I figured you'd have a good handle on it. So again, people, open up today. I'm going to be here as I wrap this up here for questions. If you have a kid on the spectrum and you're wondering, can my child take a probiotic? What strength? How many CFUs? How many times a day? Empty stomach? Should my child take a multivitamin, right? Just something basic. Ask me. That's what I'm here for. It's April. Spring has sprung. I think today is a good sign. It's a lot better weather finally. I think the hope's going to stay, and I put the kids' sleds away, so don't tell them, but that's my sign. I think spring has sprung. I can't go back now, right? So come ahead. If you're wondering, do we do stool testing, allergy testing, MTHFR testing, gene testing? That's what I do. Been doing this now for 13 years. And I worked in a huge integrative medicine center. I understand chelation, both IV chelation, transdermal chelation, oral chelation. I have those answers. These tests are right at my fingertips and available for you, okay? So again, getting back to this whole process here of how we work up a child, we look for toxicity, identify the factors, and go into genetic testing. And this whole field of gene testing is exploding right now. There's companies out there that are testing genes for drug use, okay? And it's wonderful. It's a great time to be alive. You sort of can look ahead and say, geez, I might be predisposed to cancer, breast cancer, colon cancer. Is there something I could do in the anti-aging gene switch pathway to do? Yes. Because check it out. Low vitamin D, as I said before, is not only linked to autism spectrum disorder, low dopamine, low serotonin, immune challenges, it's linked to cancer. When we run that genetic test, we can find out, do you have the problem increasing your vitamin D? And that right there in many kids is huge. What else do I do at my clinic? I'm a trained craniosacral therapist. I'm a chiropractic physician. I licensed in 2004 in craniosacral therapy. So I take my hands, gently put them on their child. And remember that old commercial for Bell Telephone, let your fingers do the walking? I let my fingers do the walking. I have honed palpation skills, and I can find out where the blockages are and release the tight spots, release the tension, help with headaches, focus, cognition, give better eye function because it's all wrapped up in there. Great question, Aaron. Does out-of-state insurance cover this? It sure does. And something else, people, I do Skype and phone consultations, and what I do in those cases, we drop ship you all those test kits. You just go to your local lab and get them, or you do a lot of them right at home. And that is really nice because I understand so many times if you have a kid with special needs or a child with some anxiety or social challenges, in-home testing is just great. We do that at home for you, and I send you the blood work test. We get those back, we meet again, and we'll do it by phone or by Skype. So that's a neat way to follow up. So yeah, great question. Again, please, people out there, come ahead with questions. So what else can we do here? It's the genetic testing. It is alive and well here at the office, and we look at for environmental toxins. So right now here, I'm going to get ready to wind down. Any last minute questions, I'm here for you. I've treated thousands of patients. I understand ways of chelation, and just briefly before we bow out here, I'm going to take you through one quick example here. Talked about the kid a little bit ago, had restoration, playing hockey, gained weight, back in school, okay? I didn't quite get to finish that case, but come ahead with questions. That's why I'm here. Phenomenal case. So I'm speaking in a little store up in Ohio called the Mustard Seed Market. 3.5 years later, the boy's mom comes up to me. I'm done speaking. The whole time I'm speaking, I'm giving a health talk, and I'm looking and thinking, I recognize that woman. She comes up and she says, Dr. Noah, I want to give you a testimonial. That was my son years ago who was frail and who had major issues with Asperger's. And she's like, I gotta tell you right now, he couldn't be more popular. He has a ton of friends and he loves going to birthday parties. And I said, wait, what? Refresh my memory? And she said, he was the kid who never went to a birthday party because of social anxiety. Great story. And guess what? He joined their ice hockey team for their school up in Cleveland and is playing ice hockey and throwing some pretty mean hip checks and shoulder bumps. So good job. Another question here. Rachel, thanks for chiming in. For those insurance questions, it's best to call the office. Ask to speak to Jody, and she can check the policy number and your different group numbers and work through that, and she can go through the authorization product and see what's there. Do you have a preferred genetic test? I sure do. My preferred genetic test is the one your child can do. If it's the blood one, we do the blood spot test. And there's a couple really good companies out there that give us a SNP array, anywhere between 28 and 30 SNPs to do that. And there's some really good ones with saliva. So actually, it determines there. All right. And Aaron, thanks for the question. What's the genetic test tell you? Great. Okay. Personalized medicine is alive and well. So what does genetic test tell me? It tells me that I no longer have to guess. Remember I said before years ago, methyl B12, I was giving it away like you'd give away candy at trick-or-treat time, right? If you're a parent at the door passing out candy. I mean, I'm like, the more methyl B12, the better. So absolutely, right? So gave this away all the time. Genetics takes the guesswork out. I was reviewing a case the other day, and this parent was in there, and she said, we're making great strides with the program. Lowered the glutamate, got off the MSG, balanced the vitamins and minerals, the zinc to copper ratio, the calcium to magnesium ratio, the manganese, molybdenum levels. Great progress. The ticket was this. They needed hydroxycobalamin, not methylcobalamin. That had the child speak. Beautiful, praise the Lord. Okay? It also helps me identify if there's focus and speech issues, where the child might be going wrong. Remember I said before, my universal neighborhood friend there, Sammy, we can look at methylating and we can look at gene SNPs for something called sulfur. So many people say, please give me a more specific diet. I've tried GFCF, we're bored with it, we're tired with it. I've done anti-yeast, I've done, paleo. The diet suggestions can help with sulfur sensitivity. They can help me with making specific recommendations for thyroid patients, patients with autism spectrum disorder, learning disorder, asthma. The gene testing is phenomenal. So that's been wonderful for us. So anyhow, when it comes to this type of testing, it's alive and well. So the final thing I want to say with autism spectrum disorder is sort of this. I'm going to come to you from my heart. There's a child inside there with a specific language. My kids growing up, and my boys are going to hate me someday for this video, they like Dora, okay? And they were learning Spanish. They might be in, your children could be in speech class, and it sounds like speaking Spanish to me, all right? I used to tease people and say, I barely knew English by the time I was in 6th grade. What the heck are you trying to do teaching me Spanish? I sort of have to master this thing called English first. Your children may be receiving the best speech therapy in the world, but if it's not going in, if they can't interpret, or if they're sitting there sick and they don't feel well, it's no different than you with a cold, the flu, and you feel sick and maybe have a sinus infection that day. You had a crappy day at work, you're tired, you come home, and your neighbor comes over, and now they want to have a coffee with you at night. You feel terrible. You don't want to talk. Could you imagine if your child's sitting there and trying to learn and they have yeast and acetaldehyde, these chemicals in their brain? They have mold exposure in their brain and they feel not well. They've just ingested a bunch of food allergies, excuse me, and they don't feel like talking. So boys, don't be mad at me someday, but you like Dora. So when you're trying to learn language, if you feel sick, it's hard to, okay? So let's remove the sicknesses, remove the brain fog, identify the allergies, the triggers, and allow these kids to feel better. The second thing I noticed, let these kiddos talk to you in their way. If they're stimming, that could be high ammonia from the gut bacteria. That could be high ammonia from a mutation called CBS interfering with brain function. If these kids can't walk down an aisle in Giant Eagle when you're toting them along with grocery shopping, or you're taking them to the mall Christmas shopping and they can't go by a candle store, you know, you're sitting there trying to, wafting the stuff out of your face. Maybe you're thinking, where's my essential oils rescue remedy or something, or some homeopathics. They're probably low in detoxification. They can't detox well. So even for the nonverbal kids, let that mean something to you. If they're toe walking, if they're flapping and stimming, God love them. Let that talk to you. That's often high glutamate, high ammonia, and food sensitivity. We look at nutritional tests to identify what to do. Magnesium, right? Pycnogenol, all kind of OPC3s and antioxidants to cool that off. Zinc, cooling that off. There's ways to do that, but let their symptoms be a language to you. If you see eye tracking issues, many of my patients look out of the side of the eye like this, and they have to see in their peripheral vision. We look to vitamin B12 and the cranial sacral therapy to make the nerves here talk to the brain back here and communicate back in again. Again, let them be signs. And please, parents, I've treated so many kids with eczema and psoriasis. Let the skin be the sign of the internal microbiome. You know, over the years, I say someone's eyes are the window into their soul. Let the skin tell you something. Think of walking into your kitchen this afternoon and grabbing an apple or an onion, and there's a blemish on the top. And you say, oh my goodness, I gotta do something about this. So what can happen is inside the gut, the liver, it can be toxic. What do I mean by that? Food allergies, inflammation. I talked about before the microbiome, the need to do bone broth and kefir and probiotics and look for SIBO, this kind of infection in your small bowel that should be sterile like your bladder. So you've got to look in here and find out what's going on. That is a huge sign. If your doctor tells you your child's bowel movements at 1 or 2 times a week is normal, no way. That is not correct. It's called transit time. From mouth to anus is transit time, 12 to 18 hours. If you want a marker, have some fun like I used to do when I was in natural school. Eat beets or something, right? You know, eat some corn. Do a marker and watch it pass through. If it's going days, that is wrong. Excuse me. These are signs that your child is sick. If your child always has strep throat, please consider coming to our office and we'll check your child for PANDA syndrome or PANS, this pediatric autoimmune neuropsychiatric disorder. 9 years ago, I had a child who was on antibiotics for 2 years around the holidays. In April, in fact, this time of year, they came to see me. She said he no longer plays basketball. He is causing fights and problems with his siblings, and he's having some major attention deficit at school. And she said, we're asking, is he on drugs? She said, I don't get it. I said, how about his siblings? She said, oh, they're great. I said, how about you guys? She said, oh, we're great. She said, we got over the flu. And I said, whoa, wait, what? You got over the what? And she said, oh, we had strep go through our house right before Christmas. And right around the New Year, he got a second bout of it, and it just didn't seem the same since then. She said, but he was cultured, and everything was A-okay. Red flag for me. Screaming sirens for me. I ran a triple blood test looking for streptococcal and some biomarkers on a urine test, and boom, there it was. Streptococcal infection elicits inflammation around the brain. So these things, please, in conventional medicine, I hear your heart. I was an EMT, an athletic trainer. I was trained conventionally in the beginning, and it's wonderful medicine. Wouldn't change it for the world. However, these things are called biomarkers. No different than sampling your soil, like I said. They're biomarkers. The skin, the infections, the bowel patterns, the flapping, the stimming, the toe walking, biologically, they mean something. And yes, parents have come to me and said, but my kid's MRI is normal. But my kid's head scan, CAT scan with contrast is normal. What a blessing. That's wonderful. But deep inside, there's a cell that's sick. So mitochondrial disorders need much more attention. We've been running these tests in the office for years looking at mitochondrial deficit. There's cocktails we put in place to get your pumps inside working. Did you ever look at a home and say, geez, honey, this is the perfect home, and you walk down and you go, oh no, it has a sump pump. Does that mean it has water damage? What does that mean? Is there mold? Is it going to flood? This mitochondrial pump is like the sump pump in your house, okay? It pumps out the junk. If they're toxic because of toxic metals, genetic predisposition, bacterial infection, it doesn't work. Toxins in, toxins out. You can fill up your trunk with junk and you'll stay sick. So what has to happen is identification of these signs and matching them to your child's precious behavior. Okay, I'm all for applied behavior analysis. I'm totally for speech therapy, physical therapy, occupational therapy. I work really, really well with these people, and we constantly in Innovative Family Wellness refer to these people. But I can tell you this, if your child is still sick, and there's that mommy intuition, there's that voice inside that says something is wrong with my child, I know it. I know there's a food sensitivity, a trigger, an environmental allergy. That's available at the office. And as I said before, we have these testing. I write the blood work scripts, the urine analysis, the organic acid test, the stool test, the genetics test, the saliva test. I have years and thousands of patients of experience to go on. So I'll give you one other example. You ever walk in Whole Foods and you stand there and think, oh my word, I just want to take a multivitamin. A multivitamin with fruits, with vegetables, B12, folic acid, vitamin A, extra E, extra D, extra fish oil. What the heck do I do? I am that vitamin coach. I'm the guru. We do testing to take out the guesswork. So we do personalized testing and design custom nutritional plans based on your problem. So this now takes into this modern era of medicine that's individualized. So in this realm of autism spectrum disorder, these kids have a language, they're crying out to be heard, they need to be heard, they're wanting to be heard, they're sick. Don't for 1 second think to yourself that voice inside that's saying something's wrong. And here's one final thing before I leave you. Whenever I take a history of somebody, and by the way, these visits last about an hour and a half to 2 hours, if I'm sitting with you and you tell me, Dr. Noah, here's my child at their first birthday party singing happy birthday, saying mommy, saying daddy, looking at dog, saying dog and cat and kitty. And here they are at 18 months and something changed to cause a regression. Respect that. You go after that. Remember that show called Blue's Clues? And that kid walk around, right? People actually said I look like him. I don't think that's a compliment, so I'm sorry, everybody looking at me. But Blue's Clues, that's a clue that something happened. Stop. Hold the press. You need to investigate that. When somebody actually finds out that there's a major problem in a sequence of events in chronological order where you became sick, stop. For me, I told you, about 4 years ago, it was Lyme disease. I'm working every day, vibrant in health. I've overcome my chronic fatigue, my constipation, my brain fog, my anxiety. That was 20 years ago. And all of a sudden, my joints hurt. My back hurts. I have brain fog. I looked at my father-in-law at the table and couldn't remember his name. Couldn't remember where I put my keys, all right? Crazy things were happening. The Lyme test was normal. I had Lyme cofactor disease. If I would have bought into that model that, hey, Noah, everything's fine, I went to see my PCP. Our really good friend and ER doctor also evaluated me, told me everything was fine. I asked for an MRI of my brain. This whole saga went forever. Everyone kept saying, you're fine. I said, baloney. I'm the walking wounded, I'm the vertically ill, and I feel extremely sick. Something's wrong. Respect that. So I can tell you this. If you feel that something's wrong with your child, biologically, Remember I said before, someone mistakenly said instead of biomedical autism, they said biological autism. Respect that. Look for thyroid, vitamin levels, metabolic levels, mitochondrial levels, toxic metals, allergies, fungus, and yeast. Okay, a big issue. All right. So again, this has been Dr. Noah Erickson from Innovative Family Wellness, honoring April Autism Awareness Month. Please, we have a Facebook page out there that's going to be very active now. The message has got to get out and be heard. It's on my heart, and we're here to help. If you have questions, call. The office number is 1-877-533-9993. That's 1-877-533-9993. You can call that number or check us out online at innovativefamilywellness.com. That's innovativefamilywellness.com. And please share this. This message needs to be heard. I'm here open, wide open today for all sorts of information. And check out the website, Dr. Noah's Ark. Okay? DR, that's my first name, Noah, and then Ark, Autism Recovery Center. So check us out. I invite you to learn more about homeopathy, intestinal detoxification, methylation, genetics testing. It's what we do. We're here to help. And please stay tuned as I bring more of these to help you empower yourself and learn how to get well and stay well. Everyone, I want to wish you a great day. Have a blessed Easter. Take care. And again, happy April, and glad to come ahead today in honor of Autism Awareness Month. All right, everyone. Thanks so much. God bless. Bye.